Welcome to today's event, and I'm so excited. We are taking part today in the What Come Next series, especially dedicated to our psychology BSc students and or combined with Cognitive and Clinical Neuroscience, Counselling and Criminology. It's organised today also by the alumni team, so thank you for the alumni team for organising this event. My name is Chantal Gauthier. I am Senior Lecturer at Westminster University for the Psychology Department, and I'm also a sex and relationship therapist. And I am absolutely delighted, getting emotional already, to be able to invite our alumni, who, by the way, have sat where you are sitting right now, many, many years ago, some of them, and some of them have recently graduated. And they are here today to tell a little bit their story, what they've done since they've graduated. So, there'll be an opportunity for some questions from the audience. I'll be asking them some questions to begin with, just to get it going. But just before we do that, just some house rules. The session will be recorded, as you know. This will also give you an opportunity to play it back and to listen to it later, so you'll get an opportunity, you will be sent a link where you can actually listen to the recording at a different time. Also, if you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free, raise your hand, or you can post your question on slido.com, slido.com. There's a QR code. You can just use your device, click on the QR code, or you can put in the code WCM1234 and we'll be able to answer your questions. Right. So, without further ado, let me introduce to you our lovely alumni. Shade, or Dr. Shade King. Make note. Nima, Phoebe, and Ursula. Just as a starting point, perhaps you could, and any of you can start, maybe just say a little bit when you studied here, what degree you studied, and just in brief, a little brief summary of your career from start to here. A snapshot, because we're going to delve deep into that with the questions in a minute, aren't we?
I'm happy to start. My name's Sade, and I studied here between 2013 and 2017. So I did the BSc Psychology course with the placement the sandwich year as well. So mine was a 4-year, Mine was a 4-year degree. So I graduated in 2017. And I am a clinical psychologist by background, and also a lecturer and academic tutor as well. And in summary, I guess a snapshot of how I got here. So I finished my degree, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I think that the key thing for me was having done the placement year. I got a bit of an idea of what clinical psychology was, so I went and I worked as a research assistant first of all. Looking at research, working with people who have a diagnosis of psychosis, which was a really great experience. And then I also worked as an assistant psychologist on an inpatient ward as well. So I got a bit of experience in clinical and research. And then that year, later on that year, I decided to apply for the doctorate, and I was successful on my first attempt, which feels like a bit of a fluke sometimes. So I did my doctorate in clinical psychology between 2018 and 2021, and I've been qualified about 3.5 years now, and I'm currently working in a specialist service supporting refugees and asylum seekers in East London, and also as a lecturer at UEL, University of East London as well.
Thanks, Shade.
Okay, I'm Nima, and I studied BSc Psychology at the Regent Street campus actually from 2000-2003, I wanted to do. I wanted to become an educational psychologist. So the route back then was to do a PGCE, 2 years teaching, and then do the psychology doctorate. I fell in love with teaching once I did the PGCE, and I stayed teaching for 20 years. I've currently I've got my own business for tutoring now, and I teach part-time, and I'm also a self-development life coach for parents who are going through overwhelm and guilt and not being present. I've lived and worked abroad in Dubai for a few years, and it's taken me to where I am now.
Thanks, Nima. Just to check, are you able to hear in the back? That's amazing.
I'm just going to give feedback.
Yeah, Phoebe,
Yeah.
go for it.
So I'm Phoebe. I studied here between, this is a hard question, 2019 to 2023, I think, is the dates, yeah. And I did a placement year as well. I did BSc Psychology and Counselling. And then I went straight into my Masters at UCL with the Android Centre, which is a children's clinic. I do early child development at the moment. And I'm also an assistant psychotherapist in a neonatal intensive care unit. What else do I do? I'm also a shooter, so I do that as well. I do a few things. And I'm hoping to do the child and adolescent psychotherapy doctorate. So that will be probably next year. I think I need a year out. I think I've done a lot back to back. But yeah, I think that's me. I think I'll save some for later in case there's any other questions. But yes.
Thanks, Phoebe.
Gosh, it's really difficult to go after so much success to explain. I'm Ursula. I started my psychology degree here in 2019, but in year 2 I found that neuro was something that was more up my street, so I transferred over to that course in year 2. I graduated in, I think, 2022, this is quite a while now, and then went straight into my neuroscience masters at King's College. I did that for about a year, and then went straight into graduate medicine, so I'm in my second year now of graduate med. But during the time, obviously to afford degrees, I was working, but I was at a drug rehabilitation centre down in Oxford for 6 months. That was really fulfilling. I could see what we were doing in terms of research, and then seeing it in inpatient, it was rewarding, to say the least. And then I've obviously had to dedicate a lot of my time to studying medicine. I'm also, I'm so nervous, I'm not the best public speaker. I'm also the head of nutrition at somewhere called Levita. So they provide businesses with pesticide-free fruit and veg, so that obviously healthcare, we don't want to have awful food, and the food industry at the moment is causing lots of health issues that we could be limiting, but it does start at what we're eating, brain-gut axis and all those things. And I've been doing lots of research with Oxford and King's at the same time, and publishing with neurogastroenterology, just to prove the links that what we eat does become our health.
Great, and you're doing great.
Thank you. I'm not the best one.
Yeah, there you go, some encouragement. You know what, just listening to you, just hearing what is so nice that we have quite an eclectic group, don't we? We have some students that have graduated from the BSc Psychology degree course. We've got someone from the BSc Psychology and Counselling, and we've also got someone who has done Cognitive and Clinical Neuroscience. So it's a really nice combination in terms of who we have today. And just picking up on what some of you have said in terms of, maybe coming into Westminster with a particular mindset of that's the course or that's the route I want to take, that's the discipline I want to take within psychology, but maybe changing your mind along the way. On that, I have my first question, if I may. So, what did you do at Westminster that helped you figure out your career path?
Very good question. I don't mind. I think for me, two key things. The first was building really good relationships and networking. And I think that's testament as well to still having a relationship with Chantel and to other members of the course team. And I think that one thing that I realised really early on is it really is about who you know and the impressions that you can make on people. And any talks like this, or anybody that I could find who was really interested in what I was interested in, I was finding their email, I was sending them really long emails, I was knocking on their office doors, I was having those, I guess, extra conversations and building those additional relationships. And I think that that really stands, and it stands today because we still all have a relationship with Chantel. The second thing, she's great, isn't she? And I think the second thing for me was the placement year for me, which I think I did both the placement module. I don't know if these things still exist, I'm just speaking from when I was there, but here rather. So I did the placement module in the second year, and then I opted to do the full placement year, and then make my course 4 years. And that really changed the game for me, because I didn't actually really know what the difference between clinical psychology and other types of psychology were before then. And I think making that decision to extend my degree, but for what would come back tenfold and more, was just such a brilliant opportunity. I got to work alongside a team who I still have connections with. Those were the people that went on to give me references for my doctorate. And so I think for me it was balancing, the academic side of things and, doing really well in my modules and making sure that I had the evidence base, but also going out there and practically applying what I was learning. And then when I came back in the final year, I was really motivated and ready to go, because I was like, I've seen where I want to be, so I know what I have to do to get there. So yeah, I'd say networking and practical experience.
And Shade, you'll be pleased to know that we're still using your placement video.
No, you're not.
Oh, yes, we are.
That was many years ago, everyone. I hope you get better since then. Wow, I don't know.
So it's still a year-long module, and if you have the opportunity, there's a wonderful experience too. A little bit what we talked about, didn't we? An opportunity to to apply what you've learned in the classroom, all these theories, right? And then to be able to then kind of apply those in the real world in some shape or form through the placement. Neem, I think for you, it's really, your journey's been really interesting, hasn't it? Because, as you said, when you first initially came, you wanted to become an educational psychologist. And then what happened?
So life changed dramatically. So what I wanted to do was be an educational psychologist. Before I came to Westminster University, all my experience, my work experiences in schools, play schools, everything. So I really wanted to work with children. And then when I realised that I had to do 2 years teaching, I didn't want to do that at all. But I did, and I fell in love with teaching. And then I worked in early years for 20 years teaching, and then went through to senior management, and it came to a point where that career didn't work for me anymore. And then I wanted to do something back into psychology. And I looked into kind of being a psychologist, being a counsellor, being a psychotherapist, but actually coaching came to light. And I did a diploma at the Coaching Academy, and I started my own coaching business, personal development coach for parents and people that have got families in vulnerable situations. So now I have my own business in both tutoring children and coaching families. So for me, it made me realise that actually you can do anything you want to do. You're not stuck. What you do at the time, you're not stuck in that position. You can change your career anytime you want, as long as you have that passion and you know which steps you need to take. So yeah, that was something really.
Yeah, I think that message is really quite strong here, isn't it? You might come in with a particular route, but you might change your mind, and that's absolutely okay. Or you might decide to go on a work placement and then realise after that experience, actually maybe this is not the area you want to specialise in. Again, that's absolutely okay. It's just all that experience that you then can accumulate will always be there for you, right? Transferable skills. And on that note, Phoebe, if we think, I'm just going to ask you, if I may, if you think about reflecting on your academic journey here at Westminster, what are some of the transferable skills do you think you developed and were really, really useful in the real world in the job that you're now doing?
I think I think it's all about the examples that the lecturers set for you, because when you start and you're a student, you're like, these people are doctors of psychology or whatever they're doing, they're like professionals, and you feel like, God, like when is that going to be me? That's so far away from where I am now. And you put them up on this pedestal, but when you meet people like Chantal and you get to know them and you realise they're just people that have had their own background and they're magnificent people, but it's not out of reach for you. I think that was really important for me to have those examples. So I think that was really important, and making connections with them, as you were saying before, I think it's really important. And I think the placement year, I can't stress enough how important that is. If it's an option for you, because I know it's not an option for everybody, but if you can, I would really strongly advise you to do it, because I chose to do mine in clinical psychology, even though I knew I didn't really want to do clinical psychology. It was a safe way of me ruling it out as an option. And I know some people may think, why did you do that? It was in paediatrics, and I wanted to be in paediatrics. I knew I wanted to work with children and adolescents, so I got that element of it, but I also got to see, what does this look like in practice? I've heard all about this, but in theory, but what does it look like in practice? And I love my supervisor, I love my placement, and I'm glad I did it, but it made me put that to bed, and I was like, okay, no, I definitely want to do psychotherapy. There's nothing wrong with the field of clinical psychology, but I really love psychotherapy. And so it allowed me to make that decision. I think the whole culture here at Westminster just makes you feel safe enough to take those risks, make those options, and get to know people. And the placement year, I think I came back to fourth year with a completely different mindset, as a completely different person. It gave me an extra year, which during my dissertation, it was so important for me. Some of it is just, you don't know, there's changes in you can't put a finger on what actually it is, but you're changed. And I think it was my first real chance to be in the real world of like the work environment and everything, because mostly you're just learning about things through a book, and otherwise you're not going to have any idea about the application of it. So I think that was really important. The transferable skills, though, I think communication skills, because you have such good relationships with the staff, you're learning how to have a professional relationship with someone. So although I keep in touch with Sanjay and Chantal, I see them regularly, it's in a professional capacity, and it's learning how to have that professional relationship, which can be lifelong, but it's professional, and I think those things are really important. And then they can become your advisors, and when you are doing things like the doctor application, I know I've got them to lean on and they're there for me, but also you have the wonderful opportunities to come back and give back as well, which is wonderful. There's just so many ways Westminster has really given to me, so yeah.
So thinking about the transferable skills that some of you have picked up so far, I'm thinking networking and communication is two. Any other transferable skills that you feel you've gained from your degrees that you found are really useful in your current professional roles?
I'd say time management.
Time management.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Everyone make note. Time management.
Accountability, because when you're
Yeah.
working in a professional environment, people are relying on you, and you are you have to face the consequences of what doesn't happen. That's the same with assignments and projects here, isn't it? So.
Yeah, so time management, let's add that to the list. Any other?
General self-discipline, I think, especially if you have a goal. When I was doing my dissertation, I wasn't the best at scheduling time to actually write it. I thought about it a lot and worried about it for so long. I was like, oh, I must start that, I must do this part. Oh yeah, no, I'll do that. But actually doing it is less effort than thinking about it most of the time. And once you start an essay, you go, oh, that wasn't that bad. Once you get into it, it's fine. Just do it, and then it will get, you won't have to suffer so much. So I think disciplining yourself in terms of your own priorities and what you want to achieve is probably one of the biggest transferable skills for myself, particularly now that I've been writing quite a lot. I can manage my time as well, knowing that, okay, I did this morning, this is my afternoon, rather than going over everything and thinking, oh no, I don't have time, stressing myself out. And you don't produce the best work when you're not in a good mental space. So I guess self-discipline, major time management, particularly for neurodivergent brains as well. You have to have a structure, sometimes that goes out the window, but that's okay. As long as you go back to disciplining yourself and starting again, that's also fine.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying, if I'm hearing, is being proactive and being self-motivated. So, you know, maybe taking on a more active role than being maybe in a passive passenger role, but taking that responsibility for yourself. Is that what I'm hearing you saying? Thanks, Ursula. Any other transferable skills that just, you know, that you feel, I mean, are there any transferable skills? Let me just put a tweak to this question, if I may. Is there any skill or any particular activity you might have had to do in your course when you did a degree and you might not have really liked doing it, but actually have you then realised that that was a transferable skill that was quite helpful in your current roles? Is there anything you can think of?
I feel like you can see into my brain, Chantal. That was actually what I was going to say anyway. Chantal will remember, well, I hope you remember, the presentation that we had to do for occupational psychology at level 6. And at the time, I don't know if it might have changed now, but we were in groups and we had to create a brand and a logo and do a presentation about our brand and our business. And one really key skill for me that came from that is presentation, and not just how you present your skill, your craft, but also how you present yourself. And just looking at us all today, being here today, if it wasn't for the sometimes uncomfortable presentations that we had to do at uni, and you know, I know how it can be, you're doing a group task, someone's not pulling their weight, they're not replying on the group chat, like they've not sent through their slides, me at the time, is a bit of a control freak, and it's like, why hasn't everybody sent their slides? Like, you'll have it all, but if you go through that process and you navigate like the norming, the storming of groups, you come out with a really beautiful end result, and you realise that actually it's about the relationships you build with people, it's about how you work through the conflicts, the difficulties, and that is the real world. Like, I, as part of my lecturing role, I need to stand up and present to 50, 60 trainees at a time. In my clinical job, I have to present cases, I have to think with my team about how to work effectively with people to help them support their mental health. And if it wasn't for some of those, you know, at the time, they seemed really uncomfortable and like, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to do group tasks? That really does carry, and I think it's transferable whether you work in a clinical role or otherwise. So, yeah.
I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of research methods, I must admit. That was really the bane of my existence. I could not do it, and it was just something that always came up. And I remember when we finished the module, I was like, yes, it's finally over. And now that is my main role in any of the papers, is to write the research methods. And it was such a full circle moment, because once you actually understand and get confidence in the area, you're like, oh, that's actually so useful. So for something that I really did not enjoy, I constantly do that now, which is very funny. Wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah, that's interesting you saying about presentations, well, because I remember in all my presentations, group presentations, I used to try and get the smallest part because I didn't want to speak, or do the slides, or just avoid it altogether. So that's interesting that you say that now. I do it all the time.
So, looking back then at Westminster and your time here, what would you have done perhaps differently?
I probably would have enjoyed myself more, but allowing myself to, because I think I was very hard on myself in terms of grades or wanting to achieve such a standard that I set myself, that I didn't enjoy my university experience as much as I should have or could have. So I actually, when I went into my masters, decided to actually, be very present, not put too much pressure on myself, just take a breath sometimes and just, remember why you started doing this, not just, building up this amount of pressure that you don't perform as well as you should have, and then it's like this whole mess of emotions. So I think I would personally enjoy my time more if I were to go back.
Yeah, I think I'm exactly the same. I'm doing my masters now, it's a 2-year masters, and I still find myself falling into that trap of like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed, there's so much to do, and I have a tendency to be like, look, I like working at home, I don't like working in a library. It's just me. So I would rush home, I've got to study, I've got to go home. But I'm now, literally this week even, this is a recent change in me, I'm not going to lie, I'm still growing. I was like, I need to spend more time with the people that I'm on my degree course with, because especially in what I'm doing, it's very reflective, and you need to talk together as a group and bond and gel. And I think it's important to have those social times as well. You won't be able to apply yourself to your work if you're constantly working all the time and you have no reward. It's not what it's about. And I think I did have more balance when I was here, actually. I think that I, towards the end, had found that, but I have a tendency to be like, oh, I need to work all the time. And I think just enjoy it here. And I should have spent more time at the library, even though I like working at home. The libraries are wonderful. Enjoy yourself, come to the library, work with your friends, collaborate and learn together. And I think, make use of your lecturers as well, because they are very supportive here. And just, it goes so fast, it really does. And then, yeah, it does go really quickly, so just enjoy it, I think.
And if we think, again, thinking back when you were doing your degrees, it was a very different time to the times that we are in now, but still, changes in the labour force. I wonder, I'm curious, that at the time when you were doing your studies here, did you have any worries about future employment? And any worries or concerns that you might have had, how did they compare to in the real life, in hindsight?
I think I was really worried that I wouldn't get a job, or I wouldn't be able to be what I want to be. And I was worried about the competition, I was worried that I didn't know enough. When I finished my psychology degree, I went into a postgraduate certificate education at the Institute of Education, and I was worried that I wouldn't get a job. But actually, what I realised in interviews is that you don't need to know it all. They just need to display those skills of commitment, of discipline, of learning, and of being wanting the passion, really. So actually, when I got employed, it was nothing to do with how much I know. I learned on the job, and that's what you keep doing. The job, you learn on the job, and you become experienced, you become more qualified. So it was very different.
I think you need to show willingness and openness to learn, and you need to kind of have confidence in yourself enough to be able to say, like, I don't know this, I'm not too sure about this. Especially, like, obviously I'm thinking psychotherapeutic stance now, that's where my mind's at, but it is part of your competencies as a professional is to know what your limits are, because it's much safer when you're working, when you know your limits and you can be aware of them. And self-awareness is really important. And that comes with maturity as well, but just don't be defensive about it. Just if you don't know something, that's okay, and it's not likely to be the reason that you're not going to get something. I think applying for jobs is really difficult. I was applying for jobs whilst I was waiting to hear about if I'd gotten into my masters. And I honestly have to say it was a horrible time for me. It was really, really difficult, and I don't think we should sugarcoat that at all. It was horrible. Applying for AP roles is really hard, and you have to just remember not to take it personally. It's a really competitive field, and there is going to be a path that works for you. It's a bit overwhelming because we have too many choices, I think, when we do this course, or any of these courses actually, and it can give you choice paralysis, but just go with what feels right in the time you're in. You won't regret that. Just do what feels good for you. Don't worry what everyone else is doing, because you're already in different trajectories anyway. So I think worry about what feels good to you, what you'll enjoy, and you've got to be decent at it, but you'll learn on the job as you were saying. So I think just go with what feels good at the time, and you can keep your options open, but you don't need to play it too safe, because you're at the start of your careers, and just enjoy, take the risks now, and just, I think that's what I would say,
Yeah, it's such invaluable things what you're saying here, because there is maybe this feel that we need to get it all right, and that we need to know it all, that we need to do it perfectly. And if we don't, we can be quite self-critical. So it's so refreshing to hear, what you're saying as well, picking up on knowing your limitations for now. That might change, but that's okay. We're not expected to know everything now, right? That's what I feel I'm hearing you say. Shade, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, I guess just to add as well, you know, clinical psychology is notoriously really challenging, and I think that's one thing. I remember sitting in a lecture once, and I think the lecturer that we had said, you know, most of you probably want to become clinical psychologists, and it's really competitive, and the truth is that many of you won't. And at the time, I remember thinking, well, that's me out. And it wasn't intended in that way, but I think it was the reality of this being a really challenging field. And what we know is that, just as Phoebe was saying, like assistant psychologist roles are really oversubscribed. There's such a bottleneck in psychology where there are so many applicants for the doctorate and for kind of pre-doctorate roles. And then what happens is you come out the other side and it's a candidate's market and there's loads of jobs. So that's one good thing to just let you know when you're qualified. But one thing I would say is that I think those worries go a little deeper as well. You know, what we do know is that with many institutions and with many professions, clinical psychology is not absolved of the many challenges that we have, for example, with institutional racism and with discrimination. And what we do know is that we are not seeing as many successful candidates from the global majority. I'm very much still a minority in my field as a clinician and also as an academic. And we know that it's not for want of applications. We know that it's not because people aren't applying. So we know that there are challenges. We know that there is stigma and discrimination that is going on in the field. And so what I would say is, for everybody, but also particularly for those of you from the global majority, we are here, people are here, and many of us in the profession are here for support. Reach out to people, connect, send a LinkedIn message, send an email. There is so much more of a movement that's happening in the field and so much more of a light that's being shone on what we need to do. And I think it's really important that we stand up and be counted and think about righting the wrongs of the history and the current that we're currently in, and thinking about how we diversify our profession, because we're definitely not there yet. But it's also something that's motivated me. It's why I came into the profession. I remember saying to my parents, like, I know that I'm here for a reason. The reason is to challenge the inequalities, and that's what I've made it my lifelong motivation to do. So, yeah.
I just wanted to pick up on, what you're talking about, this competitiveness and this concern about, getting jobs. Are you able to give some tips, perhaps, around the hiring process? So,
I noticed that I was getting less responses when I had written in my CV that I had recently graduated. And I also then looked into whether me changing or removing my age were to affect responses, and it majorly did. And I thought that there might be an issue with being recently graduated. So I personally would remove when you graduated off, because you've qualified regardless, or you've earned that degree regardless of your age. And I think that there was a narrative or an opinion that just because you were a lot younger than some of the other candidates that you were less competent, but obviously that's not the case. So I noticed that when I was sending any CVs or applications, the minute I removed I was a recent graduate, I was getting way more responses, even though the timeline wasn't an issue. It was, their idea of, maybe they're a bit young, no experience, that it changed nothing else on my CV, but that was really interesting, so maybe try that out as well. And change your CV depending on what job you're applying for. Write your cover letter for that role. Don't just send the same thing to everybody, because it needs more importance, more time to that role, what qualities you have that would be more fitted to that role.
Yeah, I agree. It's exactly what I was going to say, but make your CV very specific to the job you're applying for, because you can have a general CV and a cover letter, but it has to be very specific, and that's what will give you the edge.
LinkedIn is great as well. That's the majority of anything that I've been offered comes from. So make sure your profile's up to date, connect to other people, network as much as you can. Any of the research that I've done was purely through networking. I didn't apply for it, we just knew each other at university, and then it kind of went from there. So connect with other people, stay in touch, and also if they reach out to you, don't delay a response, because sometimes, you've got to look professional, and if you haven't replied, or it's like a few days, if you can, depending on obviously situation, just try to be in control of how your life is going, in control of how you're going forward with it. It's no one else's responsibility but your own, so be your own advocate and put yourself out there without feeling too vulnerable.
What about with regards to being in an interview situation? So you've gone through the first process, your CV, you've submitted, you've been accepted, and you're coming in for an interview. Any tips that you could give our current graduates on how to manage an interview situation, or what you could do beforehand?
I would say something I've always done and I think has made such a difference is reach out for either an informal chat or a visit to wherever the job is. Really show your interest and get them to remember you, so that when you have the interview they're thinking, oh yeah, I spoke to that person, they asked those questions, they showed a real interest and insight into the company or the organisation, whatever it might be. Really make your mark. And I would say in any interview, whether this is for a job, whether this is for a postgrad course, like the clinical psychology doctorate interview is notoriously laborious. But one thing that I think, so I remember doing that interview, it was a whole day. I had to sit in front of a panel, I had to do a test, I had to do a group task. And I just remember feeling so overwhelmed and being sure that I hadn't been successful. But the things that I think really helped was, number one, I took time to stop and pause and think. So instead of jumping straight in to think, oh yeah, great question, this is what I'm going to say, I took a pause, took a sip of water, always have water, it's a great prop. And I took the time to think, how do I actually want to answer this question, instead of just using words just because I need to say something. And also I did something that I felt was quite radical in my doctorate interview. I let them know when I didn't know the answer to a question. So I can't remember what I was asked, but I remember I said to them, I'm not entirely sure that I have all of the information to answer that, but this is what I would do to go and find that information. And at the time I thought, that's it, I didn't know the answer, I'm finished. But what the feedback I got showed me was that I was honest, I didn't try to oversell myself, but also I made it clear that I was keen to learn, that I was eager, and that made the difference between them thinking, actually she thinks she knows everything, she's not willing to learn and grow, and actually me showing that, this is a 3-year course I'm applying for, I know some things, but there are going to be some things that I need to learn along the way, and I'm still learning as a qualifying clinician.
And in your case, should they apply for the first time for a doctorate? Sorry, am I correct? Essex, sorry.
Yeah.
And got in.
Yeah.
So, and just, hearing what you said and how you manage that situation, I mean, that shows that you have that ability to show vulnerability in what you said, but also to be honest and to be authentic, but also being able to think, well, what could I do with that? So also being resourceful at the same time. So.
And also, they already accepted you for an interview, so you are at a certain standard to be in that room. So imposter syndrome can hold you back, but just remember that they've already read your CV, saw your application, you were good enough to be in that room, so have some confidence that, not everything is riding on that 15 minutes that you have to speak. You earned that place to be interviewed. Just have some, confidence, or give yourself less of a... Imposter syndrome I suffered with majorly, especially through my masters. Kind of feel like, oh my god, everyone's so intelligent, I don't think I fit in with this crowd, but you do, otherwise you wouldn't be there, the space wouldn't be for you and you wouldn't have got in. So just give yourself some credit and some value to what you've already done and achieved, because not everyone does that.
Phoebe, you've got any tips maybe from your experience?
Yeah, so I've done different sort of settings. I did the educational setting as well. I was a SEND assistant for a while, and that interview, gosh, I don't remember that interview actually. I think with every interview I've done, I probably should give you more advice about the academic side, because that's probably where I have the most experience, the masters and everything. It was a very competitive course that I was applying for. There's only 16 of us now in this master's course. And there's a lot more applicants obviously, but and I was like, oh, it's UCL, I'm not getting in, it's UCL, why would I be, and I felt like, oh, I'm an imposter. So when I got the interview, I was just like, I need to do my prep. I just need to think about what they're going to ask me, what the sort of things they're looking for. Look at the course specification if you are applying for a postgrad course. Look into it and think, what are they expecting from me, and how can I show that? But mostly just being yourself. I wanted it to come through who I was because I want to do something very psychotherapeutic. So I need to be in touch with myself, and I need to be able to reflect and have that capacity. So I wasn't trying to force anything. I kind of, if there was an answer I wasn't sure about, I'd take a moment and I would just think, or if I needed them to repeat the question, because I was nervous, like, it's fine. But I think those people are now the people that interviewed me are now my course tutors, so I'm really close with them, and it's funny how intimidating they seemed when I was being interviewed by 4 of them, and I was like, and I felt this little person, and I was online, and it felt really unsettling to be online for some reason. I didn't feel comfortable with that. But just being, do your prep work, if it's a job or wherever it is, just know what you're getting yourself into and know what they're expecting from you, have a rough idea, and then just try and answer to the best of your ability. You need to just show that you have the potential, because if you knew all of it, you wouldn't be applying for that course because you'd be probably teaching on it. So, I think, and even if you're not confident, just try and pretend you are a little bit. So it can't hurt to just fake it a little bit, because I think, inside you can be, usually I'm shaking always. I probably was before when we started. I'm permanently shaking, so, but just take a deep breath and be present, and because otherwise you'll miss the questions, you'll miss, what you're being asked, and just really think about it. When you're grounded in that moment, you're not too stressed because you'll just focus on what they're saying to you. That's what I would say.
Great, really invaluable tips. Thank you. Nina, you set up your own coaching business. So, what tips could you maybe advise to students who are maybe thinking about setting up their own business?
If you're thinking of setting your own business up, make sure you're doing something you love, because when you set your own business up, it can be quite isolating, and you have good phases and bad phases. You have to be consistent, have a plan, have steps towards achieving that plan, and take those steps. Have support. See where you can, if you need any qualifications for it, and what experience you have that will help you. When I set the coaching business up, I did a qualification at the coaching academy, and I was really scared because I thought, I can't be a coach, I don't know enough about it. But actually what I realised is my psychology degree, my teaching experience, working with the families that I have been working with for 20 years, all came into play there, and that gave me the confidence to then start getting my own clients, then start, networking is really important as well. So if you're starting your own business, network, see people who are in the business, who do you want to aspire to, and then see what they do, and then get advice from them, and then try and just not copy, but try and see where you want to be, and try and do the things you need to do to get there. You have to be disciplined. It's really important because it's very easy to not get motivated. It's quite isolating sometimes. As a teacher, I work in a team all the time, so when you're not working in a team, you have to really motivate yourself.
Because it's quite something, isn't it? Do you feel that, and this is just out of interest, because you have set up your business, do you feel that is something, did you have any, thinking back of your degree here, was there anything in the degree that you felt actually helped you set up a business? Do you feel that's something you would like maybe have had more of?
I wish I had more of that.
Okay.
I didn't, because I wasn't interested in setting up a business at the time.
Yes.
It was very much, I want to do education psychology, this is what I'm going to do. So the thought of having a business didn't even cross my mind. Only when I went through teaching and I realised I've got 2 girls, so it didn't work for my lifestyle teaching, because teaching is stressful, it's a lifestyle. And that's when I realised I wanted my own business, and that I had to learn on the job. I had to learn from other people who set up their businesses and how they did that. And actually you still never really know what you're doing, but you can try to put yourself you have to try and do things that scare you and try and put yourself in vulnerable situations. And what you realise is when you do something, you become more confident, you get more clients, and when you get these clients, you see that change and you see how much of an impact you're making. It just makes you realise that what we're doing is good and meaningful, and it gives you the confidence to carry on. And it's all trial and error.
Definitely. I think I've watched, so my partner, he started off actually with a private hedge fund and then went straight into producing fruit for companies and shipping those. So it was kind of a jump as well. So I also think be prepared to adapt to your strengths. Don't hold on to the original idea that you had, particularly around your own company or business, because the market changes. You might think your idea is really great and actually it's not, and that's okay. Be prepared to fail, but always go back to the drawing board really and just see, who do I know, what are my strengths. Don't be too upset if something didn't work out. Those failing moments is where you learn, where you improve. So I would say that as well.
Resilience as well, isn't it? It's even in interviews, you are not going to get every job, and that's okay. You just carry on.
And my old tutor here, I believe I don't know if she works anymore, but she did my dissertation, and I was so keen on having this one idea as to how it was going to go, and this was the end goal, and she kept telling me, cut the umbilical cord, because by the time it's 6 months later, your hypothesis would have changed, your methods would have changed. Go with the flow, don't be so rigid with this idea, and I was not letting it go. But I ended up letting it go, and now I still use that phrase with my partner and say, cut that umbilical cord because you're all so stressed. And it's actually worked really well. So adapt and don't just cling on to this one idea that you have, because you actually surprise yourself and surprise yourself with your strengths and where your journey can actually go.
So just picking up on that, Ursula, thinking back, all of you, when you were here doing your degrees, any regrets that you could have maybe done something differently?
Personally,
I don't think so. I think everything I've done, every mistake I've made, I've learned from, and I'm who I am now in my dream job, doing my own thing.
Yeah. So even though, so actually learning from the things that maybe didn't go well.
And it's okay to make mistakes. It's
Yeah.
okay to make mistakes and learn from them and do something different. It doesn't matter, nothing's set in stone. You can be anything you want to be, whenever you want to be.
So having that belief in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's just go back to CV writing, because that's really a tricky thing to do. And I heard you saying it's important to create have a standardised CV, but then tailor it according to where you're applying. What is there anything in the CVs that you have maybe added that you think really gave you the edge? Or are there things that you could add in a CV, that is maybe outside curriculum that you feel is really saying something about who you are as a person? Do you feel that is an important element?
I think that maybe the opposite is true for me. Like, I would take things out because I would over-explain or feel a need to over-explain myself. And it wasn't, some things, when you get to a certain stage, they're not really relevant anymore, and you don't need to keep it all in and cutting that umbilical cord again. Like, the attachments of things I've written in there years ago, and you're kind of scrabbling for things when you first start, but then just kind of think about what it is that they want from you. And in terms of additional things you can add, I thought about my career and I've been reflecting on it, and what is it that I need? I need to think about what it is I actually need in order to be a psychotherapist, for example, or to work with children. You need to be creative, you need to have the communication skills, you need to have patience. Obviously you're not writing all of this in your application, but I can show my creativity through why I like doing art, so I can put that in there if I want to. I speak another language, I can put that in there. It is always relevant because you never know what type of patients you'll see or clients you'll see. I have patients who speak all different languages at the hospital I work in. So just, I don't say think outside the box, it sounds a bit extreme, but I think, just think beyond the realms of what you think you should be putting in, and think about what is actually true to you. It needs to be individual. It needs to be about you, specifically. And that's what will set you apart. And be honest, it doesn't matter if you don't have the biggest, longest CV yet, you're young, or maybe if you're just starting out a new career, it's kind of starting again, it can feel like, but it doesn't matter. Be honest, and I think don't be afraid to take things out, because sometimes too much, it just oversaturates the whole thing and it's just too many things. And when my brother's an employer in his job and he looked at my CV when I wrote it and I put all this stuff, pages, he was like, I would look at this and think like, oh no, too much. Like they want, the first bit needs to be grouping, like I put a little paragraph at the top just kind of summarising me, a bit like you do on your LinkedIn. And I think that can give them the essence of who you are a little bit, and I think that's a good way just to draw them in a bit, and then after that just put everything as it is, just lay it all out, and hopefully that will be enough. It's a little bit of luck sometimes.
Yeah, definitely, because also we have to remember that they don't read every single application. So it isn't that you weren't good enough. Majority of the time you have 3,000 applicants and there's 20, they're going to pick the first 50 to read through. So don't always base your own success on, oh, they didn't contact me, or they didn't let me know, or I didn't get an interview. A lot of the time they haven't always read everything. Even with my partner's business, he had so many applications for a designer for the website, and he was like, I can't even read all of these, I'm just going to grab a bunch and that'll do, and I'll go through those. So you're also in a sea of other people, so don't be too disheartened if you don't get into the interview process, because sometimes you might not even have had your application read. And cut the jargon out, in 2016 if you worked in Sainsbury's, completely irrelevant. That's, represent yourself and what you're doing now and where you want to be going with it, and tailoring it per application is a really good idea, just because each one is individual, your role is individual for each one, and you might want to highlight certain things about yourself that is a strength in one area, or maybe you wouldn't mention that in a different process. So just put more time into it, rather than just sending about 30, going, oh, job done, hopefully I get a reply. Spend time on each one, you'll get more success, definitely.
Also talk to people that you know that might be in the field. They might give you tips, they might give you an edge that you can use in your application, or talk to people that might know people. So that's why networking is really important, talking, putting yourself out there and telling people what you want to do and where you want to apply, because someone might know someone and they might be able to support and help you in doing that job.
Yeah, I would say as someone who shortlists, for example, for trainee clinical psychologists and assistant psychologists, what I'm looking for is your why. Like, why do you want this job? Actually, when I always ask people to reflect on their why when it comes to psychology, because I often hear, because I want to help people. And we all want to help. That is brilliant. Not to say I really hope you do all want to help people, but I want to know more. I want to get really into it with you. Like, what is your why? Because it's really tough to do all of the roles that we're in, and I can only speak for myself on a personal level. But to be a clinical psychologist, essentially, you deconstruct yourself and build yourself back up again, because you're learning so much about yourself, the world around you, that you're not the same person when you come out of training. You're not the same person as you grow and develop. So I want to know your why. Like, why do you want to do this? Like, where have your life experiences taken you? Like, how have you landed here? And sometimes that's in an application, sometimes it's in an interview. But when I'm shortlisting and I just see, I'd really like to help people, and there's nothing about the job that actually shows that this person's even read the job description. It's quite saddening, and I think particularly where I work with refugees and asylum seekers, I'm very protective over the people that I have in my team as well. It's really important. We work with a very vulnerable population, and I want to know that the people that come into my team have the same morals and values and the social justice stance that we have. So really think about your why and dig deep.
So on the back of that, any tips you can give to our graduates in preparation for doing further studies, postgraduate degree, doctorate, or whatever is on offer? What would you say to them? What would be helpful to prepare after 3 years being here at Westminster?
I think have a sense of reality of how much you can actually take on versus what you want to take on. When I was doing my Masters, I was very naive about how much energy that would take from me and what a jump it actually was in terms of academics, how much time it took, the mental load that came with it, I don't think I prepared myself mentally for how intense it actually was. And I feel like if I had prepared, I may have deferred potentially, or given myself, not training, but a bit more of a pep talk before going in and realise, hit the ground running from day one, not realise 3 months later, oh no, I'm swamped. So I think have a sense of reality about how exhausting coming from a degree and going straight into another one actually can be. 3 years or 4 years if you've done placement, that's a lot of dedication already. If you need to take a year out or you need to take a few months off, that's absolutely fine, because you can't go in with your cup empty. You have to be able to give yourself justice for your own abilities. The energy isn't what took away from your success. So give yourself time. There's so much time to succeed. I'm now just doing graduate medicine. I'm in my year 2, but I'm still with students that, if they went in the original pathway, they'd be about 21, I'm 25, but I don't feel like I'm that age because I've chosen to do it at this age. You have so much more time than you think. Everyone's in such a rush to get where they need to be, but there's so much learning in the slow pace of the journey. You'll learn more about yourself, you'll mature, you'll meet more people. So give yourself some grace with not feeling like you're not doing enough. You are doing enough, for sure.
I think a bit like Charlotte said, your why. I mean, why are you doing a postgraduate degree? Is it where do you want to be? Is it because other people think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a good idea? Will it get to where you want to be? Do you know where you want to be? So it's very much about why you're doing it, and if you have enough of that reason to say it, it's often, I know that when I was younger, my parents used to say that you need to have a certain path, and I often used to do it for my parents or for someone else. So it's really important that you do it for yourself.
I think in terms of the preclinical training, because I'm not doing, it's not just a master's, it's a preclinical training to prepare for the doctorate. So I think I didn't really anticipate how hard that was going to be. I had a sense, I thought I knew how hard it was going to be. I thought it was going to be really difficult, but what does that really mean? It's been really intense. It's a 2-year master's, so it's a lot. There's 2 arguments. You could have, I thought I've got momentum going now, I'm in this, so I might as well keep going. I was burnt out and I just didn't really realise, so I think you understand how I thought. And it's been really tricky because I think in some ways it would have been good to have that year out, but I do fundamentally believe we do the things we do for a reason, and we set ourselves on those paths for a reason, and I'm glad that I'm in it now, but it was a difficult period that I went through where I was like, oh no, I think I probably could have done with a year out. So I wasn't particularly rushing, but I do feel there was this urge to keep going once you're in it, and I don't think it's necessary to do that to yourself. In terms of the postgrad themselves, just do what you enjoy, because it's going to be hard. The jump is massive, and I think if you're currently a person like me who worries so much about perfectionism and getting the top grades, you need to kind of let go of that when you do your masters, because the drop in your grades would be humbling. And I did really well in my undergrad. I was really proud of that, and I thought, I'm going to do great now. I'm not going to have a problem doing my masters, and I'll just be at peace with whatever I get in my grades. I wasn't. I needed to do a lot of healing and work on that. It's not, at masters, I can't stress enough how important it is just to focus on what you're learning and not worry at all about the grades. You need to let go of that. Because once you get to the pre-training qualifications and then the training qualifications, it's about passing, it's about understanding what you're doing, seeing where it's what you're getting from it and where you want to go based on what you're learning, and just really taking it in and enjoy it. I came up my undergrad being like, I feel like I know more about what I don't know than what I was focused more on that than what I've actually learned, and that's a good thing. But yeah, when you go into your masters, just focus on learning. If you're going to do a master's, if you want to do research, then just think about what it is you really care about. So, yeah.
Great. I mean, you sound also passionate about what you're doing. And I'm just wondering what would be really nice for you to share. What is it that you love about your roles? Or what you're doing at the moment?
I feel really lucky. I really love watching my clients grow. I really love watching them achieve their goals and their dreams, and I love how it has a ripple effect on their families and the people they love. I think that's really, really fulfilling, and I'm really happy that I'm in a place where I'm doing my dream job. It's flexible, it's adaptable, and I'm helping people, and I'm taking all the experiences from my psychology degree, how people behave, and the NLP techniques, as well as my teaching experience of 20 years working with families and children. So that's what I'm really enjoying and loving, and it's a real honour to be doing it.
I think for me, I love the advocate role that I'm able to take up. I see myself as a bit of a psychologist activist, to be fair. And for me, I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for the lessons that my clients have taught me, the people that I work with have taught me. You know, I work with an incredibly marginalised group of people who teach me so much about the world every day, and I feel so blessed to be able to be just, even, as Nima was saying, just a small part in somebody's journey. You know, when somebody says to you, like, you know, thank you for just being with me, like, and just how creative being a psychologist can be. Like, you'll learn along your journeys about different approaches and CBT and psychodynamic therapy, and they're great, but also how do you apply them? So, you know, yesterday I was in a session with a client who, to help ground her when she's having flashbacks, we play gospel music. She's a Christian, and that is something that we do at the end of our sessions, because that is what brings her back to centre, that's what brings her back to safety. And that's not something that a textbook taught me, but what you know, my degree did teach me is how to be with people and how to adapt my approach and how to be critical of the evidence base. And that's something that I think, you know, at the levels you're at now, if you're looking for those higher grades, be critical of the evidence base, think about it, you know, what populations are we researching on, like how are we're thinking about, you know, outcomes, but who are these outcomes based on? You know, the population I work with, refugees and asylum seekers, there's not a lot of research that actually has been, you know, conducted within these populations for us to be able to say this is what's effective. So yeah, be critical, ask those questions, be those people. And in my other role, I really love being a part of the next generation. So, you know, I'm really a firm believer in lift as you climb. And I think for me, being able to be a part of somebody's training journey and to have influence into like the next generation of clinical psychologists is really important to me.
I'm doing a lot of things at the moment, so I'm trying to think of what bit do I pull from because I'm a bit overwhelmed. So I guess being an advocate is really important. I'm a psychotherapist in a hospital, so I'm working with medical professionals as well as psychology. You can imagine that there is friction at times and there's a lack of understanding, and there are many times where I'm having to be good at science communication to make them understand, medical professionals understand the psychology perspective of things and the importance of us being there. Sometimes they question that. Advocating for patients if you hear them being spoken about poorly, or if you think that they're not able to speak, giving them a voice. And I think doing stuff like this as well is really important to me because I come from like quite a low income background, and it's not very accessible, this field at times. Like, you know, the psychotherapy doctor in particular, there's so much mystery around it, and if I can like make that easier, I'll do the hard work, and I'll make sure that if I can make it easier for any of you here and anyone else, that's like my job done, because I just think it shouldn't be as hard as it is to get into, and it won't be eventually. We're going to make it. I feel optimistic we're going to make it better, but I am really passionate about making healthcare and like education more accessible for everyone. And I think this field, every day is different. I love that. Every single day is different for me. I do parent-infant observation, I do research, I do tutoring, I do educational work for children, all different ages, and then I work with parents and infants in hospitals. So my weeks are so varied, and I love that we have that freedom in the profession to do that. If I want to, please, hopefully one day I'll qualify, and I'll be a psychotherapist, and then I could be teaching as well. There's lots of options that we're doing, and I think that's wonderful. We've got a lot of options. There's so many ways we can reach many different people, and that's the beauty of this field. And it's why I got into it, but it's why I've stayed, even when it's been difficult. Yeah.
I'm on the same page as you. I've done so many different things that I didn't think that I'd actually be going into at all. It wasn't on my agenda, that I've so enjoyed. Mainly just seeing your hard work pay off is just really fulfilling as well. And it's just like, oh, I did that amount of work, I stressed that, that much, and I did it. It's, achievable. I think obviously I'm still in medicine now, I went a niche route, I guess, because I didn't do the classic pathway of doing the 3 standard A levels of science. I was actually chronically ill at the time, so I had a year off and then came back into sixth form when I had recovered from my illness. And I went to do psychology and again transitioned to neuroscience and then did my master's and then went straight to medicine. So I didn't actually do what normally people would have to do. And I think that's really important that I stress that just because you haven't done the pathway that everyone is doing, that your options aren't limited. You can still go back. You still earned, a science degree. And I wasn't expecting either to, whilst in medicine, the networking that I've done has allowed me to be part of publications that I didn't dream of being part of, let alone only having done a master's. Lots of people haven't, gone and done that. But I think if I wouldn't have changed my path to where I am, but I definitely would have given myself a bit more credit in terms of relaxing within the role and enjoying what I'm doing rather than being stressed around it, but still being like, it's my passion, but your hair's falling out, so what, balance out whether this is your passion or your own pressure. But what I love, mainly about the papers that I'm doing is that we hopefully at some point can steer away from too heavy-based pharma. We can be gut-friendly and understand that, there's other routes as well in terms of medicine that we can take that isn't going to just be a bottle of tablets. So that's kind of my passion at the moment anyway, but it's been really fulfilling, extremely fulfilling.
Just hearing you all talk. Getting a bit emotional. There's such a sense of being proud. Your journeys have been remarkable, and we thank you for coming to this event, for talking about these remarkable journeys that you've been on. So it might be time for us to ask the audience if they have any questions. Yes?
So much for today's discussion. It's been very insightful, very inspiring to hear you speak about your passions and what your pathway has been to this point, and I'm sure you're going to go on to achieve greater things in your future. I was wondering what each of yours why is. As Shade was speaking earlier, it was very interesting to hear that this is how people stand out from one another. It's the motivation behind their decision to pursue a certain career path. So I would love to hear what each of you thinks about your why.
Great question.
Strangely, I actually was a professional dancer before I went into science, and that's obviously a very competitive field, particularly with ballet or that type of genre of strict performance. So when I actually started to do my university degree, it was mainly because I was unwell as well at the time. I thought, okay, I can't put my body through this anymore. But then I had to really dig deep and go, what would make me feel better post what I had experienced in terms of my health. And I thought if I could give back in that situation I felt that it took from me, that would be a very healing moment. So then going into psychiatry or then into neuro, that really helped me heal from what I went through and be able to now give back to patients, or even just understand where they've been. I think it's helped, particularly in their experiences of their health, it's been letting them down as well. And it's been, I've surprised myself as well in terms of stamina, that I could actually do any of it. So that was quite nice. But that would probably be my why, is to gain control of what happened to me and be able to then help other people. That's really my why.
I think mine, I wanted to be a translator when I first started out, so I studied Spanish, and I was a translator. But I realised I was spending all of my spare time not doing anything to do with that. I was helping people all the time. There was no pastoral team at my school. I'd gone through a really bad period of bullying, to be honest, and I'd had really poor mental health because of it, and I always suffered with anxiety since I was really little. And I wanted to understand, I wanted to know why, and I think part of me trying to grapple with that and figure that out was through helping other people, and I just spent all my time doing that. And I hadn't done any A-levels that were relevant to, I suppose. They were university, so which was good. But I hadn't done psychology, and I hadn't done sciences. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to apply, but I did. 2 weeks before, I was actually due to come here to do Spanish, and then 2 weeks before the deadline, I was like, I want to do psychology now. I'm like, oh no. And then I did that application and I got in, thankfully. And I think it's just never wanting, and I don't want anyone to feel the way I did through school, and that's why I want to work with a school age group, is maybe a psychologist in school. That would be ideal for me. I think there's just not enough support in schools. It's really difficult. When you have a mental health condition, you're young, you're growing up, you don't understand it. I just want to make the help more accessible. I saw those psychotherapists, I thought, I want to be one of those people, I want to help someone. But beyond that, I love learning about people and why we do what we do. And I love advocating for them as well. I really identify with you because I really, really do. I want the whole thing to become more accessible. But going through what I went through at school, I think was a turning point for me. Because I was like, I love helping people. It makes me feel fulfilled. Like I wouldn't need to be paid for this, and I haven't been for many years, but I love doing what I'm doing, and I really enjoy it. So I love working based on passion, and obviously money is important, but I just think if you can do a job without being paid for it, that's a good sign. So that for me was like, I'm spending all my time doing this is what I want to do. So that was my why, I suppose.
My why was a result of a mental health breakdown back in 2016. And I was teaching, and when I was teaching, I was supposed to be working part-time, but I ended up working 7 days around the clock with 2 young children, and I got to a point where I crashed. And then I had to think about my career and my life choices because it wasn't sustainable. It was affecting my family, and had I had someone at that time, like a parent coach or a life coach, to help me navigate things before I went to that crash, then maybe I wouldn't have that crash. So I'm really passionate about helping parents, helping mums, helping families not get to the point that I got to, and as a result, completely changed my career. I did different qualifications, used my psychology degree, just completely changed.
I would say that my why is my community and many communities like mine. As I kind of alluded to before, I look around and I see how many racially minoritized communities are failed by systems. You don't have to look too far to see the rates that black men are being sectioned under the Mental Health Act. I worked on a forensic inpatient unit as my first qualified role, and I very quickly became burnt out because I came in like I want to be the change, and I'm looking around and I'm seeing all of these young black men, and I'm wondering, how did you get here? And I know exactly how they got there, but I felt really powerless. And I say I still feel that sometimes, because what I'm saying is my why is ongoing, because the system is still systeming, for want of a better word, and there's still a fight. So my why is because there's still a fight to be had, but I also need to recognise how to fill my own cup as well. And one of my favourite quotes by Audre Lorde is, rest is an act of resistance. And actually sometimes resting and actually taking time to fill my cup and actually letting my allies and other people around me really show up and show out, that's also a part of the fight as well. Yes.
Hi. My question is for Phoebe. I wanted to ask you, how did you become an assistant psychotherapist within 2 years? Because you say you graduated in 2023.
Yes, what a question. So that title, you don't really see that around, assistant psychology. I know, it's like, when I saw it, I was like, oh, I can't believe it, because it's mostly assistant psychologist roles. I am very fortunate that in my master's programme that was organised for me. So, thank you. So, in my master's that I'm doing, there is a clinical placement that they've implemented into the final year. So, that's why I've got a placement and I'm now working as an assistant psychotherapist. I think there's a lot of structural changes going on in the NHS now, so I think that role is going to open up more, and there's going to be more of them around. But it's kind of brand new, so I can't even give you too much information on it. But I would say, like, if you're looking to do a placement year, I'm not sure what year you're in, but if you're looking to do a placement year, I would, look into having those roles created, because when I was looking through the options, and John, I think John still coordinates the placements, but he was excellent, and I was looking at roles, and I was like, I'm not sure if I'm liking any of these. And then I was like, I'm going to start writing to different places near me, and see if they'd be open to taking a student. And if you see that there's psychotherapists working somewhere, and you can get a potential assistant role there, then you're therefore an assistant psychotherapist, because it's only really the person you're working under that determines what your title can be, for the most part. So I think if that's possible, that's how I would do it. But keep your eye out for the roles, because I think they'll start coming up, hopefully, soon, because it's relatively new. But it's through my master's programme. So if you have a programme that includes placement years, definitely take them on, because they give you these opportunities that unfortunately otherwise you wouldn't have access to.
What does it consist of? What does the role consist of?
What does the role consist of?
It's just use the mic.
Yes.
What does the role consist of?
So it's kind of, I guess, similar to an assistant psychology post. You're supported by a psychotherapist. In my case, my supervisor actually was a clinical psychologist, and now she's a parent and infant psychotherapist. And so I work in a neonatal intensive care unit. I attend ward rounds, and I kind of unofficially screen kind of all the patients that are there. I'm supporting the families with a really traumatic time. They're in the NICU. It's not a great place to be. You've usually had some sort of birth trauma, and the babies are often quite sick. So it's coaching the families and supporting them psychotherapeutically through their difficult time. And it's also giving, this might not seem like what it should be, but you're giving a voice to the babies, because sometimes parents lose sight of their baby, and they kind of don't look at them as if they have a voice and their own inner workings, their own mind. Some of them are very premature, so they don't even seem like human yet. They're kind of just barely functioning. So it's giving them a voice as well, and you're kind of getting them to, you're facilitating a bond between parent and infant. But in the psychotherapy role in general, you're thinking very psychotherapeutically. I operate from a psychodynamic stance, so that's kind of what I'm doing. It's just kind of constantly working to support families psychotherapeutically from a psychodynamic perspective. I think psychologist roles, you might be able to say a bit more about it. They're quite different in the way they operate. And my role's quite unstructured, so I just kind of visit patients throughout the day and just see if they would like to organise a session, just opening them up to the service and telling them we have this service here if you should need it. And a lot of the time you're sent away like, no, I'm fine. And then a few days later, they're like, actually, can we talk a minute? And then you kind of go from there. Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience? We have a few online, so I'm going to also ask the panel those questions. But while we're here,
Thank you for your words being so kind to share this with us. I just want to ask you, while you're studying, you say you're not getting paid. Do you have any example of where financial struggle has impacted your journey in education, and how you overcame it, or how did you feel when using some of it?
So the position that I'm in terms of the research, it wasn't paid, but I knew the value of what I was doing wasn't necessarily the financial aspect, particularly having just only at the time had just come from my master's. It was I think a good opportunity for me to do some research that, just because I wasn't being paid didn't mean it wasn't going to look great on your CV. And I actually really enjoyed it. And even though I was doing medicine at the same time, that was more of I would say, a hobby rather than a career. It kind of itched the itch for me in terms of research and still being scientific based, because medicine kind of stood away towards investigative nature. It was more, this is already the answers. If they have this issue, we give them this. But with the research, that fulfilled in me why I started neuroscience and originally psychology. So that, for me, in terms of finances, it was more that it was very great on my CV. It's opened up so many other avenues for myself in terms of reach out, especially on LinkedIn. One setback that I had, I think, in terms of finance, because I had just come from a 3-year degree and then a master's, and at King's it was extremely expensive and the government don't cover a lot of it. I think it was about 15,000 and they don't cover a lot of that sum. The one thing that did hold me back was that I didn't have the software or technology at the time to accommodate what type of research I was doing. So mine was diabetes based in terms of genome. So that is obviously huge amounts of data to go onto a 4-year-old Mac laptop that was literally just burning away. And I was like, oh my God, this isn't achievable. So I did have to ask my parents to assist me in getting a piece of software that actually allowed me to complete my dissertation. And I think I was quite frustrated at the time that it took me about 6 months to get to that point. And I thought if I had accessed that or had access to that facility, and I'm quite sure the university didn't provide it, if I'm honest, I would have had an easier time. And lots of my other friends there also weren't affording to even come in because they were expected to come in, Monday to Friday. By the time we'd gone in, train fares and food, it isn't just the tuition fees that you're paying for, it's the fact that you're not going to be working. You can only do part-time work on the weekends. It consumed a lot of people's ability to go out and earn and provide for themselves. And I think that's why I say before you start a postgraduate, be within your own reality of energy, time frame and finances, because you might think that you are, oh no, yeah, I'll work out the time. You have to be very serious about what position you're putting yourself in, and if you need to work for a year and then go and do that, that's absolutely fine. But yeah, that was my personal experience, I think, with financial things being in the way, which it shouldn't be. We shouldn't have those issues, and that should be catered for, but that was the reality of it. So I think take time. If you do think that, I'm not in the position yet, it doesn't mean you won't be. You just give yourself some grace, save some money, and then go in at a better level for yourself. Don't stress out too much.
I think my course is expensive. It's really, really been hard, and I mentioned I'm from a lower income background, so I didn't know at the time when I applied and I had been accepted how much it was, because I misread it. And everyone in my cohort misread it actually, because it's the way it's written was confusing. And so they said that the price I thought it was for 2 years was what it was per year. Very shocking moment. And there was a real discussion in my family. My family are brilliant, they always work hard to provide, and I had 2 older brothers and my parents that were all willing to put something together to try and make it happen for me, because they knew the opportunities that would open up for me. But it was a very real possibility for me that I wouldn't have done it. And I didn't really want to put my parents through that, to be honest with you, because my dad has his own business. It's a small business, it's a wonderful business, but he works so hard. He works 7 days a week, and my mum as well, to support him in that. So, and I've seen that from a young age. It's really hard to think, I've carried a lot of guilt because I'm they've given me this wonderful opportunity. So it was really tough, to be honest with you, and it still is tough. I'm working at the same time as my degree, and I can't work any more than I am, and I'm not earning enough really to support as much as I'd like to. My parents have been wonderful and really helping, but it's not been easy for them to do that, to be honest. It's a stressful moment every time the payment comes out, I have to say. But I also thankfully managed to get myself a scholarship. So I think be aware of what scholarships are available to you. And also, when I applied to UCL, I thought I had UCL scholarships. They didn't allow me because I'm with the Anna Freud Centre as well, so I only have access to the Anna Freud Centre's scholarship programs and stuff. So I think be aware of what that looks like. Even phone up the admissions, phone the place up, find out fully, do your research properly, because I don't think I did beforehand, because I was lucky I managed to get a scholarship, which is got me through a lot, it's really helped. But if you're not aware, then you can get caught out. So I think be aware of that as well.
I think if I can just quickly add to that really quickly, I think you speak to a really important issue that I think particularly in psychology that we need to tackle. And I think that thinking about, we've spoken about placement years, honorary contracts, whilst they appear to be really beneficial to the people who are able to, I think what they do is they do create a context of potentially elitism within, again, speaking for clinical psychology, already a white British female profession. So I think what you're speaking to there is the many miles that we have to go, and something that I know is still very much in the early days at the moment, things like contextual admissions. So when we're thinking about as shortlisters for the doctorate, what are we privileging in terms of people's experiences? What does get somebody additional marks and what shouldn't get somebody additional marks? And so what I would say, just adding to what everybody else has said, is what you're picking up is something real and something live that's happening. And and we need to think more about this. So thank you for bringing that up.
Just can I pick up on a question here from the audience here around marks? There's a question here that asks, how important were your undergraduate grades in shaping your career, do you think?
I think mine was quite important just because of the requirements to go on to do my masters. They did want a certain grade to access it, and also afterwards with the masters, that was then utilised to get into medicine. They wanted certain grading as well, so I think it was important majorly for me anyway in terms of my career, and especially where I went on to study and where my background was from. But I feel like your success shouldn't always just ride on your grading, because it's a system that isn't fair to everyone, especially those who are neurodivergent or struggle with health issues. I had so many issues with my attendance. I think my attendance was quite shocking at one point. One term was 11% because I was just so unwell. And some universities actually do a lot of their grading based on your attendance as well, about 5%, and I just thought that was obscene because not everyone's in the same position. So I really struggled with the pressure that I put myself to achieve the grades, knowing that my attendance was dragging me back as well. So I think if you can, just do your best to just represent yourself correctly. And also, lower grades isn't, we still it doesn't really matter, because if you know what your strengths are, your strengths might be very different to someone else's, and they might be coming out with the first, but someone with a 2-2 who had strengths that this company would prefer, they would be the option. So don't just base yourself around, I didn't get this certain number, because there's so much more to your character, your connection with people, your experience in life that adds so much more than just a number on a piece of paper.
I agree. So I agree only because when I hear what you're saying, my husband didn't go to uni at all, and now he's senior director of a multinational company. So grades don't matter. They do. They can be important to you, but there's also so much more that matters as well.
There's more options.
Yeah, there's more options.
Way more options.
Yeah.
I think that it does depend on what your pathway is, though, because unfortunately, if you are applying for certain things, like my degree that I applied for, you needed, my master's, you needed 2-1 or higher, and that's kind of the case for most qualifications or things you're applying for. That is the reality. I think that if you think about maybe education psychology, for example, that is the pathway. You need to get 2 or higher in a degree. But say if you've done teaching for a number of years, then I think that will facilitate. So you need to think about, okay, whatever you get is what you get. If you've tried your hardest, that's all you could do. That's absolutely fine. You have to work with what resources you have in you and around you at the time. But I think beyond that, there's other pathways. That's where the networking is important, because you can find out how many people that every single person, every professional I work with has had a different path. There's no two that are the same. Literally, not a single person had the same. So working with that and just thinking, okay, maybe I didn't get the first or the 2-1, whatever it is you didn't get. Or for me, example, my A-levels were not as, they were good, I did well, but not like A star, A star, A, you know, it wasn't like that for me. And my school's average was like DDE or something, so like, you know, it was against the odds for me to pass even. So those things will be contextualised at doctoral level for the most part. But I think as minorities, myself a minority, you feel you have to work a lot harder to get where you are. So you feel pressured to get the top grades because you think, well, it's already, my identity is working against me, it feels at times. Actually, it's not the case always now, and I think if you can reflect on your identity, who you are, and how it's made of who you are, that can be an asset. And that's a good thing, so it should be, because it makes you unique who you are. But it's complicated. So I think work with what you've got, and just, as long as you're working your hardest throughout your whole pathway, you won't regret anything. You'll have to just work with what you have and the opportunities you have around you. Networking supports that, and there's other pathways always. But unfortunately, grades are a big part of things as well.
I think also when you feel like you've been on a treadmill to get to where you are, you forget what an achievement it is, because it felt more of an obligation. But particularly if you come from a background that didn't allow for a fair entrance in, or you went, you know, my schooling wasn't that fantastic. I was in an area that didn't have a lot of funding, so, you know, like yourself, the A-levels were pretty low. But you feel obligated to go beyond that because people sacrifice so much to support you to your destination that you forget to actually go, I have achieved quite a lot, I have done beyond, you know, your journey isn't the same as everyone else's. So someone having the same grades as you, they might not have had to work as hard in different areas indirectly to achieve the same standard that you have, because they might not have had the financial aspect of it that held them back, or the social aspect, or the home life. You didn't have a supportive home life that largely affects, you know, how well you perform. So try not to compare yourself to other people's grades, because that might have been a more open door for them than it was for you. You feel like you had to really fight for your position. So just learn to you know, applaud yourself that you did this against odds, and don't give yourself too much critique that you didn't do what you could, because there's always time as well afterwards. Don't be afraid of retrying things or going back to education. No one can take your education away from you once you get it. So even if, you know, you feel like, oh, I'm failing, or I have to go back and do something else, don't be afraid of doing another path, because you'll surprise yourself with where you can go with it.
Yeah, there are so many options. You know, any career you want, there's so many different options to get to that point. So there's not one direct path. So it's really important to know that.
There's actually a question here that maybe taps in a little bit what you're all talking about. Was there a period when you lost your motivation towards your goal, and how did you deal with that?
I think there are periods now that I lose my motivation towards my goal because I'm, you know, up to my own business. So there are times when I get so many times when I'm just, I can't do this. How am I going to keep myself motivated? But actually, you go back to your why, don't you? You go back to why you're doing it, and actually you start acknowledging all the things that you have done, and actually you got here to this point because of all the things that you have done, and you actually had those challenges along the way, and you got through them. So this is just another challenge. This is just another thing to get through, and that why is really big. That's why that why has to be so important and really at the back of your mind.
I love the whole why analogy. We're going to plagiarise that. We're going to embed that in our curriculum, I think. So when you are having, you know, when you're struggling a little bit, and it is a bit difficult, and I guess everyone's been in that situation. What do you do for self-care? Or how do you remind yourself that self-care is so important?
I think
What tips do you?
I think tapping into your discipline is really important, so that your next move isn't based on your emotional stability, because that is so fluctuating, and so many things can change how you feel or how motivated you are, and go, oh, this doesn't feel great, but you have to do it anyway. And you'll think yourself, you know, if you're just sticking to your plan or the reasons again why you're doing it. In terms of self-care, I went into my master's and then going straight into medicine and didn't give myself a break, to the point where I completely burnt out. And actually in about June, July last year, I had a head injury where I then couldn't actually speak. So I went through a lot of rehabilitation for 2 to 3 months, And even though that was obviously very traumatising mid, your degree, it actually taught me to take a step back and give myself time. And I realised that was probably a very good thing that happened to me, because I was on a treadmill that was completely burning myself out. And how can you help other people if you're not even addressing yourself first? It's impossible. So going back into my course when I came back from my time off, I approached it very differently. I prioritised my sleep, I prioritised my health, what I was eating, taking breaks, going outside. I just thought, I've got to fill up my cup first before I even attempt to fill anyone else's, So I think really signalling to yourself, or being really in tune with your body and receiving the signals and being alert to them. Don't just be like, oh, I'm really tired, okay, no, I'll just do another hour, listen to it, and then you'll feel better as well. You'll just be in more control of how your day's going. And I think when someone's, I've had an experience of chronic illness that your brain wants to do something that your body is not facilitating, and that is a really difficult thing to not hate yourself for or be, frustrated with. So I think accepting that that's happening to you, and then, giving yourself some grace and going, well, how can I help myself, has been useful for me. But yeah.
I'm still learning to do that.
I don't think anyone really achieves it fully.
I think 3 weeks ago I was Googling how to recover from burnout. I don't know. I have chronic migraines, and they reached a plateau recently. A few weeks ago I lost a whole week of my life to the migraine. I was just laying there. And I had so much work to do, and I haven't figured out how to fix them yet, or work on them and manage them. Knowing when to ask for help is important, knowing when to accept defeat a little bit, and it's not a defeat, but it feels like defeat. I had to ask my research supervisor for a deadline extension. I said, I can't do this in time. I pride myself on being punctual and doing things on time and getting my work done and working hard, and I felt like a failure. I was like, everyone else in the course has got this done a month before me. I'm not doing what I should be doing. I shouldn't be here. You feel like you should be on the course. It's really hard. It's demoralising, but it's also informing me as a person, so that when I do the work I do with the patients at the hospital, I'm compassionate in a different way. Some of them are ill themselves, and it informs my practice. So there's positives to everything, but it is really hard when you're burnt out to keep pushing, and don't feel like don't blame yourself for it, because I love what I'm doing, and I feel guilty if I don't feel excited all the time. But the why is why you stay, it is, and sometimes it's kind of over-glamorised, I'm so passionate about it, so therefore I should love it all the time. No, not necessarily. You get burnt out, and I went straight from my undergrad to my master's. I'm not very well at the moment. It's difficult. Just recognise why you're burning out. Try and sit and reflect. I'm terrible at stopping for a second and slowing down. Just let yourself sit for a second and think, okay, what is it that's caused me to be where I am? See if I can reach out to someone to get me out of this. Because sometimes you can't get out alone. You can't do it on your own. I had to get my supervisor to sit with me yesterday, like I was a child, and sit there and read through my project with me and just help me make sense of things, because I'd gotten in a rut, and that's okay. And now I'm back on the go again, But it's really difficult. It's ongoing, and I think you revisit these problems throughout your life, because these are patterns that you can recognise in yourself and you can fall in and out of. So just be compassionate about that.
Yeah, I think you've covered everything. So I've been working on self-care a lot the last few years, and it is building up good habits. So those habits are ingrained. So even when you don't want to go for a walk or sit down for a cup of tea, do it naturally, and that naturally makes you feel good. Also, when situations do occur, responding, not reacting, really telling yourself that actually take a breath and think, how can I actually respond to this? Is it really as bad as it seems? Take some time to think about it, and actually it's never really as bad as it seems, and there's always a solution. But it's to get to that point. And I think covered the rest of it.
Yeah, no, I think have a life outside of psychology. Have a life. One of the questions that we ask on the doctorate form actually is, what other areas of life do you have outside of psychology? And if you write anything about psychology in that box, it will not be looked upon favourably. So, do you bake? Do you travel? Whatever it is, just live it.
Sorry, can I just say, I'm taking a year out after this, after I finish my course, because I'm tired for a bit, I want to do my, thank you, I want to do my doctorate, but that's 4 years, and I can't go straight into that. So there's nothing wrong with taking a break. I think I've finally given in. I'm like, enough's enough now. I'm going to hate this if I keep going, and I don't want to do that. I love what I'm doing. And for me and anyone with chronic illnesses, if you don't stop, your body will stop you.
Yes.
So I think remember that. And even if you haven't got an illness, and thankfully you're well, you won't be if you carry on at that pace. So like, just look after yourself.
I'm also deferring my next trimester to September from May because I need a break, because I will do myself an injustice if I go at the rate I'm doing.
It's
So
almost,
it'd be nice
it's almost slowing down to speed up, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Realigning yourself.
Yeah.
Wow, such invaluable insights here. I think we've got time anymore for any more questions. So or maybe I have one more question I've got time for. Yeah. Okay, one more question. Are there any professional organisations, conferences or events that you would recommend joining or attending? I guess it's within the realm of networking maybe as well, right? So apart from LinkedIn that you mentioned.
So I do a lot of local events for coaching. There'll be networking, so we'll go for a walk and meet up other businesses, and that's where you get your contacts. Then I go into schools as well to do talks for teachers, and that's where so that's how I.
So you know.
Yeah, that's how I network. Yeah.
Personally, because I'm currently working at a hospital myself, I noticed that a lot of the networking was around volunteering roles, so particularly medical governor roles, and it sounds really impressive and really unachievable, but a lot of those positions or governor roles within a hospital are actually volunteering, and most of the time it's general public or a few doctors maybe that came from a more professional background. But that looks really great on your CV, and you can meet many, many people through that and implement change into the system yourself as well through those roles. So I would personally recommend looking into, if you were to go down, any psych route or neuro, to look at local governor roles or things you can get involved in terms of community. Even though it's not paid, you will meet so many people and implement changes that are really important to you, and it will open up a whole avenue of opportunities. So don't be afraid to volunteer, not everything will be paid.
Yeah, and I agree, unfortunately a lot of it isn't paid, but I think if you follow your interests, that's important. So start there, follow your interests, but also back to basics. You're here now, you have wonderful staff here. Find at least one person who you connect to, make the effort, and don't just do it because it's going to benefit you. Do it authentically, because there are wonderful people who connect with at least one person here. I love everyone in the 6th floor at the Copland building. I love everyone. I'm always trying to come back here. Find people, and don't forget the value of in person, because I think it's good to do all the stuff online, like online conferences and stuff, and the BPS do good, like BPS student and stuff. They're really good. But I think don't forget that you can go in person to places and talk to people, and just see if you can follow your interests. Go in person. It's the best. If you can meet people and connect with them, it's much easier to do so in person. If that's not an option for you, don't feel it's accessible, you don't feel able to, then definitely pursue online. It's not going to be a disadvantage to do that, but if you have the ability and capacity to go in person, I definitely would, any way you can. BPS is good. The Anna Freud do stuff if you want to look at children-related things or school-related things. They're great. They do a lot of courses, so I'd recommend those. But yeah.
And it's just adding to what Phoebe said, in terms of like clinical psychology and psychotherapy specific, as well as the BPS, there's the ACP now, the Association of Clinical Psychologists. There is BARTM, which is the Black, African and Asian Therapy Network. They have student memberships. And as well as that, there's many podcasts for aspiring psychologists now. If you just type that in, wherever you get your podcasts, always want to say that. Then there are plenty of podcasts. There's an aspiring psychologist podcast, I think Dr. Marianne Trent hosts that one. There is the BPS have a specific section or division for minoritized aspiring psychologists as well. And also, one of my many hats is being a mentor with the kind of aspiring psychologists kind of pot of funding that Health Education England have given to many doctorate courses to support people pre-doctorate. So I know that Essex University, UCL and a few others, and you don't have to be affiliated or live in those areas. You can get in touch and actually be assigned a mentor who's usually a qualified psychologist, and they can help you with, job applications, doctor applications, completely free of charge. So yeah, there's a lot going on right now.
Joining Unison, really useful. They will protect you at some point as well, hopefully not. But it's a good thing to be able to, sometimes obviously it costs some money to be part of these memberships, but you will get notifications in terms of events, networking, and also it just adds an element of support for your role. Like the more people go into it, something not knowing how much helping other people can actually affect you and how much you neglect yourself, or you might be put in a position, particularly if you're not going to financially be able to have, if there was a situation where you need legal advice or things like that, they do provide those as well. So if you do join a facility or a hospital, joining those groups is a really good idea. I've seen a lot of help in our hospital. There were some instances that if they hadn't been part of that, it would have gone differently for the staff. So it's really important to protect yourself as well as a working member that's helping your community.
Wow, such wonderful insights. Join me, everyone, in thanking Ursula, Phoebe, Mima, and Shadari.